Hello, everyone. In this episode of the podcast, I'm here with Yoseph, one of the most incredible people I've met on my life. He's a very dear mentor, a student at Harvard Medical School, and one of the tutors in Kirkland House, which is one of the residential communities here at Harvard. And today we're going to have a very genuine conversation about moving to the United States, going through elementary school, high school, deciding what's going to be the path of your life and how our family influences what we end up choosing to do. But most importantly, we're going to talk a little bit about as well community mentorship and how these things shape our values and where we end up in life. So, Yosef, thank you so much for accepting this invitation.
Of course.
And
Thanks
I'd
for
love
having
for
me.
us to get started talking a little bit about where were you born and what was the period in your life that you ended up in the United States? Was that transition smooth or very abrupt?
Thanks, Edu. Before I answer that question, I want to say I met you through my role as a tutor in Kirkland House. And I was your mentor, but many times it felt like I was learning more from you than you were learning from me. You're super inspirational, and you're going to do so many amazing things in life. Regarding coming to the U.S., my family had been applying every year for a program called the Diversity Visa Immigration. And so it's this really wonderful program that the U.S. has to allow people from all sorts of countries to immigrate here to the United States. And my mom was selected, and my entire family immigrated here when I was about 6 years old.
Very young.
Very young. And I knew no English at the time. And it was a lot of cultural shock to show up in Alexandria, Virginia, not really speaking any English. And the way I learned English, it's actually a little bit of a funny story. I just watched a lot of TV. So a lot of PBS Kids, a lot of like the shows that were available on antenna TV at the time. And I was just able to pick it up just by watching like Saturday cartoons.
From Saturday cartoons, you were adjusting to a new country. But Yossi, as you were growing up, indeed, it was such an early age. But when you moved here, how many siblings came with you?
I am the last of 7 siblings.
7 siblings.
Yeah.
So a large family. What were some of the, let's say, traditions or the most special things from the Ethiopian culture that you still cultivated at home and shaped you growing up, although you were thousands of miles apart?
Yeah. I would say that like there's so much love within our family. And I think so much of who I am today is because of the just like very genuine love and support I have from my siblings and parents. And we, as far as like traditions, New Year is like always like probably the holiday we celebrate the most. I feel like every family has their holiday that they celebrate, but it was just kind of so special entering the new year with your family, surrounded by your family. And I think having 6 siblings has just meant that I just have like so many friends, and I like never felt lonely as a kid. And I felt like when one older sibling was mad at me, I could go to another older sibling who would let me get McDonald's or let me get whatever else I had wanted.
It's lovely, Yossi. And I asked this question about Ethiopian culture because I think one of the moments that I cherished the most in Kirkland was when Zulfan, who is integral to community life at Kirkland, and she works at the dining hall in Kirkland House, she invited a group of students to her home for us to try Ethiopian food and learn a few Ethiopian dance moves. And I think that was one of the moments as I'm also living thousands of miles from Brazil home, that I felt uh, very welcomed. I felt like the culture gave me like a big hug, and that was such a special occasion. And the warmth, the love of Ethiopian culture actually was so vibrant in that occasion that I can see that it was very much the same in your family. And you'll see, as you was growing up, how was your relationship with your siblings? Because I have one little sister, and I can say that we're very close with each other. But it's, of course, you're growing up together. There are moments when you want the same thing, but I don't know how that dynamic plays out when you were 7. And for how long were your parents around? Did they move back to Ethiopia at any point? That would be super interesting to hear as well.
Yeah, really good question. Also, I just want to note that you said you felt more at home at Zufan's like Ethiopian
Yeah,
dinner celebration, even though you're from Brazil. And so maybe that's just a sign that like culture is universal. And
beautiful.
despite, never having maybe Ethiopian food or never having gone to Ethiopia, just being surrounded by love, people who cared about you, and good food made you feel at home. I think that's super special. Um, and as far as my relationship with my siblings,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, yeah, when I was younger, I have a brother, Daniel. He is pretty close in age to me. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like him and I would fight as kids. But now that we are all grown up,
Yeah.
we don't like fight as much. And I feel like family is just like this, it's like a group of people that are forced to be friends with you no
Mm-hmm.
matter what throughout life. Um, and I think that's so special ultimately.
Totally, Yossi. And uh, something I wonder is when people imagine students at Harvard, and you had the experience of both being at Harvard undergrad and then at the med school, is that they imagine that these are people whose parents have been in spaces like this for generations, uh, and that college was something that was always in their plans, and there was not even a question about it. But when I came here to college, uh, meeting my peers, not only I found people who were coming from all over, but also that were uh, trailblazers and bringing their family and their family's dreams to spaces like this for the first time. I'd love to hear out in your journey. When did you find out that education was something that you would hold on to? And did you always envision college as something for yourself? And I'd love to see here as well if your parents knew what Harvard was, for example, or if it was something that was just a weird name that sometimes appeared on the TV.
Yeah, super good question. So yeah, I want to say that my kind of past before Harvard looked very different from those Harvard students. I went to a regular public high school, and I grew up like first generation low income. Many students in my high school had free and reduced lunch. Um, and so maybe not the target, maybe not one of the most like feeder high schools that go into Harvard. Um, and I would say in high school, I sort of saw school as something I needed to do well in because of the sacrifices that my family made. So we like having come from Ethiopia to the United States, largely for a better life and for school.
Mhm.
I felt like my family had made this sacrifice and that I needed to make the most of it by um, doing well in school and going off to Harvard and going off to medical school as sort of a way to kind of like make it worthwhile for my family, given how many sacrifices they made. And as far as did my family know what Harvard was? No, my parents certainly did not. When I told them, um, like, oh, I'm going to be going to Harvard, they said, like, how far away is that? And I said, it's like maybe a 1 hour plane ride or an 8 hour drive. And they said, like, no, like that's way too far. why don't you go to this community college uh, in Virginia that is like a 30-minute drive from us. They didn't want me to like leave home and go to this new city. And so I was trying to explain to them what Harvard was and like what the Ivy League was. And the way I was able to explain it was luckily Obama's daughter, Malia Obama, was going to be in that class. So I said, oh, this is the same class, this is the same school that Obama is sending um, his daughter to. And then I think it really clicked for them. And I think the special thing is my grandpa is a farmer, and my parents didn't have much schooling themselves. But for to go from that to them sending their kid to the same school on full financial aid as the U.S. president's daughter, that meant a lot for them, and I think they finally understood what Harvard was and the gravity of that.
It's such a beautiful story, Yosef. Thank you for sharing. And I wonder how many kids, teenagers in Ethiopia, in Brazil, uh, they could start envisioning this path for themselves after seeing a story like yours.
Yeah.
And I really hope that, you know, all this beautiful path reaches many, many students all around the world, because it really demonstrates that even when your parents might not know what Harvard is or an institution like that, uh, you dreamed very big, and you definitely opened pathways for not only your family but for all the community. And yeah, many more will come.
Yeah, and this is why I'm thankful you're doing this podcast, this series of podcasts, because I think you cannot aspire for something that you don't see people like you doing, right? Like, it's hard to see yourself at Harvard if you think, oh, Harvard is a school for a bunch of rich kids, right? When actually it's not. There was somebody in my high school a year above me who had gotten into U Chicago, and that was a really good school. So I was like, oh man, like that's really impressive. Like maybe I could do something similar. So I was really aiming for like U Chicago and Notre Dame. Hadn't expected to have gotten into Harvard. So I think you can't become something you have not seen. So I really appreciate that. I hope that kids in Ethiopia, kids in my high school of Mount Vernon High School, or my elementary school in Mount Eagle, are able to see this video and kind of hope for like dream higher.
Wholesome. And you'll see, outside of the educational space, a huge role that you played in my second year at the college was that you would organize the study breaks. So moments in which we just come, try different sorts of food, have fun, light conversations. And I imagine, of course, that you might have found academic passions during high school and put time into different sorts of projects. But what were some of the things that brought, or that still bring, Yossi joy? Is it music? Is there any sort of TV program that you still like from that time when you were learning English and watching TV? But I'd love to hear a little bit about the Yossi in the more fun leisure moments.
Yeah, I think I try to think about like what things give me energy, what things kind of let me recharge, and what things drain my battery. And I find that when I am around other people, when I'm around my friends, when I'm around students in the Kirkland community, um, when I'm around people, that is what gives me sort of the most joy, um, because there is a Harvard study actually. It's one of the longest running studies. It's been going on for like 85 years or so. And they looked at, they've been studying these Harvard men from like I think 1925 or so,
Mhm.
and they kind of tried to figure out what is the most important thing for health. Um, is it exercise? Is it stress? Is it what you eat? So they kind of followed these men their entire lives, and they had a really surprising result by the end of it, that the most important thing in your life for health is your relationships. Um, and so this was really shocking to me as a medical student, because we spend 4 years um, studying pretty heavily about pathology and pathophysiology and medications. Um, and, in the hospital, I have many conversations with patients about their diet and lifestyle and exercise and medications that they have to take regularly. Um, but we were never really taught about um, the importance of relationships to health. And so the Surgeon General has been super a big advocate of this, and talking about the loneliness epidemic we're having in the U.S. I think in many Western cultures, we are having just very individual like mindsets, and everybody here is so busy, and everybody's um, kind of chasing after adding another line to their CV or their resume, and people have forgotten the importance of relationships. People have forgotten the importance of just being with one another and being present and giving someone else your time, your most precious commodity. And so I've just found that whenever I'm around other people, cooking for other people, I've been exploring stand-up comedy a little bit,
It's so fun.
like making other people laugh, or feeding people, or doing like outdoorsy things with other people. That's really what gives me the most joy. Um, and yeah, that's what I love doing for fun.
You see, that fascinating study brings us a little bit to the reflection about mentorship. I think one of the few consensus in the literature about education policy today is that mentorship has such a huge potential in increasing students' academic achievement, especially lower income students. And we've seen that not only in the United States, but across the world, results finding similar studies finding similar findings. And I'd love to hear you. So you had a very unique experience for a couple of years now. You are in this position of mentoring undergraduate students at Harvard, not only in their best, happiest moments, but also when they're struggling and when they need some support, some help. Uh, and I find it to be super interesting to hear from you what you've learned through this process of mentoring. What does good mentorship mean to you? And what are some of the things you learned from your mentees? As you said, you've always tried to absorb from them as well, because I think that can clarify a little bit about what some of those who are watching might seek in their mentors and how also they might try to contribute to the life of their mentors.
Yeah. Um, Super great question. I think on the topic of mentorship, I think every single successful person owes a lot of their success to a mentor who, while they were in college or like in a graduate program, had sort of helped them out with the project or helped them kind of discover their path in life. So it's so important, but unfortunately, it isn't recognized enough by many of our like promotion systems, right? Like if a professor is trying to if an assistant professor is trying to get promoted to a full professor, ultimately what matters is like publications and
Publications.
grants, and mentorship isn't weighted as much, but it should be, because I think it's the most important role in academia is just ensuring that the next generation of students has it sort of better and is supported. I think, and how do you do mentorship well? Is you have to find the perfect balance between challenge and support, right? You want to challenge your students to try to fulfill their full potential. Um, like, and it's a very delicate balance to know how much can each student take and what are they capable of. But you also want to ensure that there is like a safety net, where if they are struggling, you can catch them. And so finding that perfect balance between challenge and support has been the like biggest part of the mentorship, I feel. And what I've learned from my mentees and my students is just your remarkable outlooks on life. You all are between, I mentor sophomores through seniors in the house. And so, like, you guys are like 19, 20, 21, 22. And I'm just surprised at your level of maturity, um, you know, that you value the right things in life, friendship, like your search for meaning. And I feel like when I was a college student, I was not this mature and I was not this thoughtful and reflective. And so and it could just be you, but I've just been so surprised by students of your generation. You guys are so much more impressive than I ever was. So I'm truly saying this, that I feel like I get more out of this mentorship role than you probably do and students probably do.
Because I think one of the nicest things is that Yos is so humble and modest. And I think one of my roles here is to ask a few questions that will allow us to capture the full breadth of the wonderful things Yossi did in these last few years. And Yossi, I do think that one of them is the transformation you helped promote in Y2Y. And then I'd love for you to explain what the abbreviation means in the first place for those who are watching. But I would love to hear from you. First, where did the motivation to engage in such profound volunteering during your time at the college come from? Uh, and I think with that question, it also comes the reflection about, when we are here at Harvard, we have incredible busy lives. You have dozens of papers to turn in, extracurricular activities, but you dedicated dozens of hours per week to building meaningful connections with people who were your age, but were in completely different conditions and circumstances. Uh, and I would love to hear from you, how uh, did that come into your own way of seeing college? I imagine that you made such profound friendships with those who you were serving as well, but they were in very different circumstances than your peers in your classrooms. How that shaped your own college experience? But first of all, what is Y2Y?
Yeah, I'm super happy to talk about Why Do I. It was a really fond experience. Why Do I is the abbreviation stands for Youth to Youth Homeless Shelter, and it basically serves young adults from 18 to 24 who are experiencing homelessness in Cambridge and Boston. And what's really unique about Why Do I is it is a student to student model, um, where or youth to youth model, where it is this shelter is entirely run by Harvard College undergrads. And I thought that was the most precious thing, um, where it's Harvard undergrads who are volunteers, who are supervisors, who are directors, who are getting like the groceries, who are doing the laundry, who are mopping the floors, who are making policies for the shelter. Um, and how I first got involved was I came during my um, uh, freshman fall at Harvard. And I lived in Harvard Yard in Strauss, which was right across from Harvard Square and um, and close to Y to Y as well. And so basically on one street, you had Harvard undergrads. You had really either wealthy students or students that had high earning potential after college, and then right across Mass Ave, you have 18 to 24-year-olds, same age, who are maybe sleeping outside, who didn't know where their next meal was coming from, and I felt first just a lot of injustice in that. That because of luck, right? Not because of hard work or because of grit, but because of luck. Some students on uh, one side of the street had 3 meals a day at Annenberg that we complained about. um, and we had a warm bed. And then on the other side, due to luck, due to no fault of their own, were young adults who didn't have access to housing and food regularly, and so I felt like there was great injustice in this. And then second, I felt like there was something I could do, right? Kind of whenever anybody's asking me what should I do for career advice, it's always what does the world need and what can you do and what do you enjoy doing. Um, there were a lot of activities, and there's so many extracurriculars at Harvard, right? I would say there are hundreds and hundreds of different clubs that you can get involved in, and the activities fair is so overwhelming, right? You could do consulting clubs or organize a conference, or there's so many things you could do at Harvard, but it felt like Y to Y, youth to youth homeless shelter, was the highest impact. There's another shelter, Harvard Square Homeless Shelter. We're lucky to have two student-run homeless shelters in Cambridge, but it felt like these two shelters were the highest impact thing that I could do as an undergrad, where because of your time, because of the time you give, you could ensure that we had about like 28 young adults, I believe, if I still remember that correctly, who were like able to have temporary shelter because of us. And that it felt like I was contributing to something greater than myself. And so that's why I had done it. And I really recommend any Harvard undergrad watching this to sign up for a volunteership at Y2Y.
Amazing. I ended up doing a semester of shifting in HSHS, which is the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And a reality that was completely different for me moving to the United States was the winter, seeing snow for the first time. But one thing that I couldn't quite grasp was how could someone sleep outside? It's such a freezing temperature, um, not having a home to go to. So I think that was a big driver motivation, but still today we see this housing crisis not only in Cambridge but across the U.S. and cities that experience extreme weather. That when conditions are the toughest, there's still people out there who don't have the most basic, and that feeling you described is a feeling that I, I hope many more people will act upon, because I think it's part of our shared humanity to feel that it's something that just can't proceed as it is, right? But Yossi, your beautiful description of what drives you shows a combination of a commitment to social justice, to a better future. Let's put it like that: commitment to a better future, uh, while also a lot of self-learning, understanding what you can bring into your spaces. And something that I need to bring up is that uh, after going through Harvard undergrad and then a med school student at Harvard, you had a very challenging role, which was to preside over the student body of your med school class at Harvard. And I don't know if that applies to the med school, but my impression observing the student body over this last 4 years in Harvard undergrad is that there's a growing division in the world that reflects on Harvard's campus. So we've seen wars arise in the world. We've seen intercultural, ethnical differences to be more pronounced in the way students interact and who they make friendships with. But you were in a position where you had this responsibility of trying to bring the community together, make sure that any sort of injustice issue or a group that was feeling left out would then be better included. So I think that in itself could give us a full podcast. But first, I'd love to hear from you. Uh, after joining med school, how was the process of becoming the representative of your class? Uh, and I know you're very modest, and I've never heard that from you, so I'm super curious about how that came about. But then, how do you lead such a talented pool of students, but also that reflects a lot of the challenges that we see in the world?
Yeah. Um, Super great question. So I will say that when I was an undergrad and in high school, I had never run for anything prior to this in my life. I was never elected to like any sort of thing in high school or in college. In fact, I was quite the opposite. I would say I was super shy in high school and then in college. I honestly had I feel like a small group of friends in college that I talked to regularly, but I wasn't super outgoing. And then essentially going off to medical school, I really tried to challenge myself to be more extroverted and to talk with more people and to get out of my comfort zone. And so running for class president at Harvard Medical School was totally not in my wheelhouse. But I think a lot of my classmates resonated with that and saw that as I was not like I was not like this person who was kind of gunning for this role, and it was somebody who was going out of their wheelhouse but was well intentioned and building community and advocating for other students. And so I think ultimately that's why my classmates elected me to this position. And it was at the time we were like getting out of COVID, but we were having lots of like variants that would come and surge. And it was really difficult because the students that I was representing wanted more freedoms because we were kind of tired of being, under kind of having all of these restrictions for many years. And then our faculty were understandably very hesitant to kind of loosen some of the restrictions. So it felt like I was sort of sandwiched in between faculty and students, and it was hard to make either group happy. And regarding kind of your question about divisions, even among students, there was a lot of that with one group of students wanting advocacy for one thing and the other group not being very happy with that. And I think what the sort of middle ground I had found is getting people to try to see their like common humanity and having kind of norms of, even before you start the conversation with people on opposing groups, having a conversation that everybody is well intentioned, right? We were all medical or dental students who had entered into a career and profession of helping others. And so I found that if you were able to, before you have any sort of discussion or debate, if you were able to get people to see that the other side was well intentioned, um, that that would make the conversation so much better, and you would have people truly try to listen, and truly try to see what the other person is saying instead of like preparing like a counter argument, and instead of trying to like make their side heard more. And so I would say, kind of through this role of class president, I transferred, I kind of grew from this very shy kid into a class leader, which I would have never expected as a high schooler or undergraduate.
I would have totally voted for you. So I would definitely be part of your classmates who put you in that role, because I think although you might describe yourself as shy beforehand, the potential is very clear for everyone around you. Yossi, before we go to our closing lines, a great conversation that we had in a recent meal was when you were explaining to me the intersection between internal medicine, which is the probable path you're going to be pursuing in this next few years, and public service. Uh, a lot of people, not only in the United States, but in the world, when they think of modern healthcare systems, they think of a lot of, money driven career planning. So you spend a lot of time in school. So when people went to, when they graduate, they hope to make lots of money, uh, and not necessarily be in areas of the medical profession that are more associated with service. So that cannot be generalized at all. But there is a perception in civil society, not only in the US, but in the world, that there's something in there that at least a portion of those who experience the medical formation end up going for a little bit of a more financial driven path. But uh, it seems internal medicine stands as a contrast. And I'd love to hear from you, uh, like, what is the routine of internal medicine? And if you could provide a little bit of what drives your passion for it, because perhaps other people could also share that passion with you, and we're going to see more people interested in internal medicine in the future.
Yeah. So I'll start off by saying that I truly believe you can do public service in in most fields. So I think you could do public service through like wet lab basic science research. If you are trying to develop like a tool to treat a drug to like treat malaria faster, or a drug to treat like drug resistant tuberculosis. And so or if you are a lawyer who is doing like immigration rights. So I think um, whatever your interests are, you can fit public service into that. And so my interests are in internal medicine. So after medical school, I'll be doing residency in internal medicine, which is basically kind of what you think of as like a general practitioner or primary care doctor. And you can also subspecialize after that into like hematology, oncology, or cardiology, or and such. And I internal medicine is super kind of convenient for public service work because you could do primary care, for example. You could basically do a lot of preventative work with communities that don't have good access to healthcare, for example, or communities that don't speak English. So that is an interest of mine, is serving underserved populations that are that either, like, because of insurance or the area they live, they don't have the best access to healthcare. And for this past year, I've been working with patients who have sickle cell disease. And so, sickle cell disease, it's a genetic disease. Um, and because of malaria, because of it provides some protection. Having sickle cell trait provides some protection for malaria. There's a lot of sickle cell disease in sub-Saharan Africa, and also where descendants of African countries have gone to. So there's about over 100,000 individuals in the U.S. that have sickle cell disease. And because it mostly affects Black Americans and Black individuals worldwide, we've seen that there's been less research funding and fewer therapeutics for sickle cell compared to other diseases that don't affect Black people. And so we've been catching up now. Recently, there's been CRISPR therapies approved for sickle cell, but it still remains a very underserved population. And I've been doing a research year this year in medical school. And I've been sort of focusing on sickle cell disease for this entire year, trying to understand the experiences of people with sickle cell, and trying to develop a tool to try to detect anemia or low red blood cell counts with AI, and using an app, and not doing blood sticks. And so this is how I've chosen to try to spend my career. But I think for students who are interested in the law, for example, or science, there's just so many ways you can use your career to make a difference. I am reading a book right now. It's Cutting for Stone by Abraham Verghese. And there is a quote in there that says, the tragedy in death is what remains unfulfilled. And that basically means that if you have sort of given your life to making a difference in this world, and you've set out to do all you can, and you've tried to make an impact with this one beautiful life that we're given, then there's no fear in death. There's only fear in death if you feel like you haven't made the positive impact in the world that you had hoped to do.
Yes, if I could turn some of these quotes that you're providing us into a book or something that we could always go back to. It was last week we were walking back together from the dining hall to our dorm, and I don't know where Yossi comes out of this beautiful phrase. He says, one of these days I was thinking, and I do think that happiness is shared. And that phrase stuck in my mind. And now it's something that I go back to whenever I think about what I want to prioritize in this last few weeks at Harvard. Happiness is shared. So let me treasure the time with friends, with mentors, and the people that I love the most. First, to wrap up, I would love for you to think of a teenager in Ethiopia or in Brazil or in your high school, anywhere in the world. What's the message that you would send to them? And I would love for it to be the message that you would like to send to your high school self in your early high school years. And it doesn't need to be about any academic or professional um, area of life. It just can be something from your heart that when you were starting out high school, you would love to hear, but wisdom from this last few years in life taught you.
Yeah. So I think a message that I would send to a teenager in Ethiopia is kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier in this podcast, which is what do you love? What do you enjoy? Um, what are you truly passionate about? What wakes you up in the morning, or what keeps you up at night? Um, and what does the world need? What do your neighbors need? Um, what does your city need? What does Ethiopia need? And then how do you merge those two? I think so many times uh, a lot of teenagers, high school students, we get lost in the sauce sometimes of, I need to go to this college, or I need to do this impressive thing. And then we sort of forget that these colleges, you know, these Ivy Leagues, Harvard, all of these, it's really only a means to an end of doing something impactful in life, right? And so I would say, sort of focus on using your skills to improving the world around you, and then Harvard and all these impressive accolades, they will all come. Um, but what's most important is that you are focused on sort of making life a little bit easier for somebody else. Um, and then advice I would give myself as a high school student, and this is pretty honest, is uh, to be kinder to myself, and to be less hard on myself. I think I was pretty strict and kind of tough on myself as a high school student. I had pretty high standards for myself, and I would say to myself and many high school students around the world, I feel like um, being a high school student, it's such a pressure cooker. Being a college student, all of the pressures that are on you now, I did not grow up with this pressure um, to kind of to try to like want to go to Harvard, and to I like kind of mostly got lucky and everything kind of worked out, but I was not trying to make it into Harvard. I was not I didn't have all of the pressure that high school students have on them now. And I would just really recommend to enjoy like being a little carefree in high school, like have fun, make mistakes. That is what part of being a young adult is. And the stress and worries will come when you're an adult. But it's so important to enjoy being a high school student and enjoy being on the football team or the cross country team, and enjoy life at every stage, because and I'll just wrap up with this. I always think about the arrival fallacy. Um, the arrival fallacy is sort of this thought that when I get to X, I'm going to be happy, right? Um, when I get into Harvard College, I'll be happy. Or when I get into Harvard Law School or Harvard Business School or Harvard Med School, I will be happy. And then the goalpost gets moved. When I get into residency, or when I become an assistant professor, I will be happy. And then it gets moved again when I become like a full professor, or when I become, a vice president at my company, I will be happy. And then what people find is you kind of reach this thing that you'd been going for your whole life, and then you say, oh, that's it, right? And so you really have to enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the journey, and not just the final outcome. And it's just so important to enjoy life as you're going through it and not sacrifice, so much of life for a particular outcome, because more likely than not, you're going to get that thing you've always wanted and you're going to be like, okay, that's it, so friendships, being active, whatever, cooking dinner, whatever makes you happy, never sacrifice that in the pursuit of a goal.
Wow. Guys, I just wanted to thank Yossi for his time, so much wisdom, and for the immense role he has played in my college journey. As you can see, there is immense knowledge coming from his own life experiences, and that is always transmitted in the most humble and caring way, which is the best. So I hope you enjoyed this session, and hopefully there will be a second conversation when we'll be able to absorb from Yossi all the weekend. Thank you, Yossi. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
I do.
it.
Of course.
Such a good time.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.